What's up, guys? My name's Abner. Some people know me as Abner from 60 Days In, Straight Cholo, the Enforcer, but I'm just Abner. My nickname's AB. I was born in Manhattan, New York, in Bellevue Hospital. I'm the youngest of six, and I come from a background of Puerto Rican, my mother and father, and I'm the youngest of six, five brothers, one sister. And I'm here to tell my story, my testimony, and kind of like let people know where I'm at, where I came from, and what my plans are for the future. So my family is from Humacao, Puerto Rico. We come from a background of Puerto Rico, but I have a mixture of different places where I lived at. I lived in Puerto Rico, Humacao, Puerto Rico, Canovanas, Puerto Rico, where I went to school. I come from a broken home. My father and my mother, broke up at the age of 5. And we descended from Puerto Rico to Harrisburg when I was about 12 years old. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Then after that, we stood there for a couple years, living in poverty and kind of like, got evicted and then went to New York. I lived in Buffalo, New York, most of my life in Buffalo, New York, upstate. I've also lived in Newburgh, New York. Recently, I lived there for about 6 years. And I'm here to tell my story of how I came about. At the age of 15, I was kicked out of high school. I was a sophomore, a freshman. And from there, my life started going, spiral. I've had multiple felonies, state and federal. But when I was young, I remember my mother going with me to the principal's office when I was in middle school, and they put me in a category of what's called special ed. And the teachers kind of put me in a category of I'm not paying attention. I'm a hard-headed kid, and right now special ed doesn't even exist. So I went from like a regular class to being like in the basement across from a boiler room to being across from detention hall. That was my class, special ed class. And everybody in my class was either Hispanic or African American, and all my teachers were of, Caucasian white. And I felt like I was targeted even at an early age from the system, and it's like some of us think that some people are born animals and put in cages, and you just wake up one day and decide to be a criminal and throw your life away. And the system plays a big part in that. So after being in multiple schools, alternative schools, nativity, special ed schools where kids just didn't pay attention and ruckus and, it was all negativity. So I started at an early age, the system molded me to become a criminal. I wasn't a criminal. And sometime after that, I started, hanging around with the wrong crowd. The crowd that pretty much just does negative things. Smokes cigarettes, smokes marijuana, weed, and just kind of like skip school. And you start out gradually, little by little. And before you know it, you're kicked out of school. And I remember when I was in the 9th grade, and they just skipped me from school just because of my age. I was a freshman, and I was escorted off the school grounds with 2 police officers and the principal. Pretty much that was the last time I was in any school. From there, I had free time to do what I wanted to do with with my free time. And I became a criminal. I started, with a 3.5 or 8 ball of cocaine and knowing the mathematics of it. You flip 1 8 ball, get a 1/4 ounce, 7 grams, a half ounce, an ounce. And by the time the end of the week, you got a big 8, 9 ounces. You got $10,000 or whatever worth of drugs. And that's where I started from, with cocaine. And from there, I remember I used to break nights in the corner and sell grams, 20s, and sometimes I would break night in the corner and never even change clothes. I would just buy new sneakers, new outfit. Like, I wouldn't even bother going home. And I left home at the age of 16 and just having multiple girlfriends, older girlfriends that had an apartment, living with them. And it was not normal. And at the age of around 17, I started playing with guns. And I remember my first felony was assault with a deadly weapon on 2 individuals. I was asked through a acquaintance to lend him some guns, and I went with him, and I ended up shooting 2 people in the arms and legs that I had nothing to do with, and I felt no remorse, and from there, guns became the way I spoke, like I would carry a gun, I would do criminal activities, and my arguments would be, do what you gotta do, and I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I was a real passive 115-pound teenager. And my first felony was assault with a weapon, shooting 2 individuals. I was sent to prison, to county time. After that, my life just pretty much went quick. I lost all my 20s in the system. And I went to federal prison, did 84 months, which is 7 years. And my life just went spiral. I had multiple events where I lost friends. And I can recall one time where I had a friend of mine that we used to do stick-ups. Stick-ups, for some people that don't know, is pretty much robbing drug dealers. And, and I had a right-hand man that used to always do that with me. He's no longer here. But I remember one time an individual that we robbed, he pretty much put a target on my head. And I remember one time living in upstate New York in Buffalo, and I was snow plowing, shoveling snow, and across the street from my house there was a apartment for rent. And I kind of sat on my porch on the stairs. It was cold, it was winter, it was one of those Buffalo winter nights, and I had a ski mask on, and I kind of put my ski mask down, and I'm smoking a cigarette. I smoke cigarettes, and I see the U-Haul, they're moving in, and after a few hours after them finishing moving in, little did I know it was my enemy, one of my enemies. And within another few hours, he put everything back in the U-Haul, and they had to move out again because they saw my face and knew that I lived across the street. No words were said, no argument, but at that moment I knew that somewhere, somehow, I put fear in people with the violence that I bred. And time went by, and this same individual that I was like my number one enemy. I remember I was with a friend of mine, my best friend that passed away, and I was in a nightclub with him. I just came home from doing 7 years in a federal prison, and the rumor on the street was that there was a price on my head, and I went out with him that night, and we we dabbed it up, bumped fists, and I'll see you at the next, club, hole in the wall, whatever, like people call it. And I was there, and I told him I'll meet you there. So I'm driving, and I could recall him saying I'll meet you there, and I'm driving down the avenue, and I see a bunch of police, and ambulances, and I drove by and saw his car, and saw a white sheet, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe he did something to somebody. So I went to the next club, partied, went home. And I remember at the time I was on parole, and they kind of questioned me of my whereabouts. And I didn't know, because when you're on parole, you pretty much have to, sit down and talk to the parole. And it was homicide. And they sat me down and, do you know such and such? And I said, yeah, I know. And in my mind, I was thinking, maybe he did sign to somebody, so I don't want to step boundaries, And he said, well, he's deceased. He was killed last night. And we got word that you were the last one with him. I said, yeah, I was with him at the club, and we were supposed to meet up at the next club. I never saw him again. He said, well, he's dead. He's been shot multiple times in the head and lower chest, with a shotgun. He's gone, close range. And it's, to this day, an unsolved murder. But at that point, I knew that, God was protecting me. Because when I was doing those 7 years in prison, my last year, I was in solitary confinement. Somebody had got cut, and I was in gang activity, Latin Kings, and I went to the hole for a whole year. And when I was in that hole for a whole year, I used to give this one SEAL a hard time. And the SEAL slid me a Bible, Like I thought it was like kind of like him being like sarcastic or something, but I kept, I picked up that Bible after I threw it to the side and read it, started reading it. And in my mind, I already had decided to change my life. I was like, I'm not coming back to prison. I've been arrested 30 times, in and out. My life doesn't change, multiple felonies. And that quick, I threw my life away. All my 20s were gone and my teens. And I didn't realize that it was me doing it. I make no excuses for it. So when I went home after doing the 7 years, and that happened to my friend, I ended up doing another bit. And this time it was like 3 years in Upstate New York. So I was in several facilities doing ASAC, KSAC, Livingston, Wyoming. I was, Elmira transfer. I was all over upstate. And when I did those 3 years after doing the 7 and the 1 year in solitary confinement, I was already in the process of changing my ways. I was no longer too violent, I would let things slide, that I did before. And I could say I got at least 12 people are walking around hating me, and I want to just, if they are ever listening, I want to tell them that, I apologize, it was wrong, and that happened, and after I did the 3 years, and the same individual that I had put a hit out on my friend and got my friend assassinated, and people in the street, people that know me know what happened. I can speak on it now because this individual's doing 25 to life. But to make a long story short, after I did my last 3 years, I went home, and I remember I got my release papers 30 days before going home, and they called my name, and I went, signed my release paper, and I kind of went home with my state greens. They give you like these khakis, these little Chuck Taylor shoes, but I ended up leaving with my state boots. I didn't have anything, a bag of letters, a t-shirt, like a little jacket from upstate. And I had hair down my back in a ponytail. Straight convict, straight criminal, straight inmate, whatever you want to call it. And I remember walking into a barber shop when I went home, and I knew that individual that I had problems with, that had a contract for me, I knew he was out there, So I went to a barber shop. I remember sitting down. I said, clean up the sides, whatever, and I asked for this individual. And I said, hey, do you know where such and such is? He's still around? That's my man. He's like, the barber said, no, he's locked up. He killed his own brother-in-law. He shot his own brother-in-law over a little nothing argument. And this was an individual that never was about that life. He would pay people to do his dirty work. And I remember when I found Christ in prison, I asked God, if you're God, please take away my enemies, take away the people that want to harm me. And he was one of them. That's when I knew God is real. That's when I knew God takes out people that sit here and put, I want to say, want to take your life, because that's what had happened to me. He wanted to take my life. And I told God, when I go home, I have enemies, and they want to do something to me, and I need you to either take care of this or what else. So that had happened 30 days before I went home, and I couldn't believe it, and I really didn't have enemies like that, like that individual. I had beef or whatever. So I just started, I got a job. I remember getting a little used car. I had got my license for the first time in my life, because I used to always have cars but never even had a license. So I got my driver's license, and I started changing my life. I started, doing positive things, and from there on, I just left that street life alone and cut off individuals that were doing that, and even females, whatever. I just try to think positive for once, and things that happened. I went to church. I ended up changing my life and doing a interview for a 700 Club. I wrote a book, titled The Pastor's Son. And I even did a TV show called 60 Days In, and I caught a lot of backlash from that show, 60 Days In, and people didn't understand the concept of me being on a TV show that supposedly you go undercover, but this cameras, TVs, whatever. So people kind of looked at it like I was an informant or whatever, and it was just TV. So I remember knowing that I was going to get paid from the show. And I did the show, TV show, 60 Days In for the right reason, just to help people, tell them, hey, stay out of jail. You don't have to live like that, And a lot of people wonder where I'm at right now, what I'm doing. Well, I took my money and put a down payment on a home a few years back in New York. I invested in a property with my family, and I sold the home. I ended up relocating to South Carolina, made a good profit on the home. and doors open up. And nowadays, I'm in Texas, and in Texas it's a little different. A lot of people get their gun rights to protect their home, even fellas like me. And my whole life has changed totally. I live different now, you know. I encourage anyone that if you want to change your life, you can. It's just my secret to it is stay away from negativity, because you know misery loves company, and a lot of people nowadays in this social media and this generation, we tend to take a quote of keeping it real. And keeping it real to some people is, you know, banging or hustling or I'm not telling on that person, but when you live civil, you know, you do the opposite. You work, you get up, you take care of your family, you know, you invest, you find a career or a goal, you know, and right now my life is headed towards doing documentary, and I'm aspiring to do documentaries, whether it's a homeless person, less fortunate, whether it's a foodie, whether it's a prison I can go visit and they let me go in, or if it's a third world country, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. And a lot of people, you know, ask me, would you do a show like 60 Days In? Absolutely I would. But I think right now God wants me in a direction to help people, help individuals. You know, so if you're out there and if you even know me from the show 60 Days In, which was my 15 minutes of fame, I want to let you know that, you know, if you have a difference towards me, I'm good where I'm at right now. God has blessed me abundantly. Like, and I encourage you to follow that righteous path. And I want to thank you. I want to thank Ocular, you know, production for letting me come out here and reach out. And you already know what I always say, straight cholo. Not only because I own the rights to straight cholo, but God bless you. Have a good one. And you already know. Boom.